the biggest challenge that I have in the moment, which is a person in my life that, I thought that we're pretty deep into doing the work, and well, maybe I built some illusions around that I have to work through as to why, right? And so now my reality is being shattered in some aspects of that brought me to emotional memories of the past, abandonment, confusion, disappointment, anger and sadness. It's a cocktail of emotions there.
It's fascinating what most people's version of doing the work is. When you go down the road that I promote, you find out that most people's version of doing the work is, and it's for most other people, it's like, that's deep work, and yeah. this is you're just scratching the surface, and there can be a real disconnect on what the work is and the level of truth, especially responsibility. Truth and responsibility, the responsibility of what it requires on a daily basis in every conversation and every aspect, and then the healing work required so that you can live in truth and responsibility,
And with that responsibility, there's an aspect of energetic management. That's what I call it. Energetic management as, okay, I'm done being the type of person that's shoving things under the rug, so to say. And so I've become quite good at this point at addressing things as soon as possible, rather than just letting them stack and stack and stack. And it does require energetic management. It's different than time management, because energetic management, when you're managing overwhelming emotions or emotions as they show up, it means you acknowledge them, you don't ignore them, you don't cope through something else. And I think through doing this work, I've become a lot more adept at noticing, oh, here I am about to scroll on Instagram. Here I am about to go to this addiction or that addiction. And fortunately, I don't see anything anymore as far as like anything that could be addicting as the problem. I now understand the source of what's driving me towards wanting to do that. And so in a way, as you can see, all in all, I'm pleased and I'm at peace with the fact that I'm managing the best that I ever have these sort of experiences happening all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what's going on.
I know for me, the energetic management, emotional management mostly is doing nothing. It's stop and put everything aside so that I can get quiet enough to let my emotions rise on their own, and the understanding of them rise on their own. Like especially now, I recognize my breathing is just because I'm just so excited. Now I am in a place where I'm getting, there's a lot to get. I'm managing a lot of people, and a lot of balls are in the air that I have to keep track of, and a lot's required of me to do it. And, so I'm okay that right now I'm in that place, but, it's in my mind of you can't go on this type of sleep. You're going to have to find a spot here where you just disconnect and you spend a day doing nothing. Because you gotta bring everything down, and sleep and take naps and lay in the sun, go for a walk, just, quiet everything down, even if there's stuff to do,
But that's what I mean by energetic management, the saying no to adding more things to the to-do list. It means something came up for me emotionally that I know I have some massive triggers that are are showing up in body symptoms, like, I'm shaking, I'm wanting to lash out at someone, I'm wanting to, do these things that are very supercharged emotionally in an aggressive way, for example. It's saying, management means saying, okay, this is the point in which my brain could start going, oh yeah, why don't I clean my car and wash the sheets and do this for that client and over deliver over here and do this there, to the point where I have zero time to actually address what's going on in my body and my mind and all my emotions. So management to me means no. Number one, I'm setting a priority to manage what's going on in here and here and all over my body.
Yeah.
And number two, I have to say no to something in my life so that I can make space in my day to do what you just said, to do nothing. And me do nothing means could mean sitting in the quiet, listening to my, feeling my emotions and see what actually comes up. And, or it could mean I actually have a conversation with myself in the mirror, a loving one where where I reach out to some help, to someone that I want to talk to, a friend, a therapist, colleague, somebody I can trust, right? That's safe to do a little back and forth with. Right. But it's that's what I've realized, that we live in such a world that is it takes pride on being busy all the time, number one. And also it deprioritizes, for the most part, doing this stuff like what you're talking about. That I even asked a person this week, because I have another client that told me I have trouble staying still for some reason. I was like, have you just tried, just relaxing? She's like, I'm so stressed. Person I work with. And I was like, have you just tried, relaxing, like taking a day for yourself? And the response was, every time I try to sit still, I get anxious and nervous and I start doing things and I can't sit still. Right. And that's what I observe a lot. It's a reminder of how many people go through that.
That's just trauma. Yeah. Yeah. And that's such a level of disconnect to recognize that that's like a PTSD response. And they just go, I just like being busy. Like the way they justify it, the denial mechanisms that kick in to minimize, suppress, and displace, all the denial mechanisms, repression, displacement, and they make it into something it's not. And that's just so detached we are from our authenticity. It's astounding how it is normal. Like, even as I'm not saying your process is wrong, please don't hear me that way, but you talked about conversation in the mirror, reaching out to a friend, I know for me, to regulate my emotional management, it's don't do anything other than quieting things that, like for me, are giving myself permission to sleep, giving myself permission to lay around and do nothing, watch TV, lay by my pool, go for a walk, maybe walk around the mall. But I'm not actively trying to dig up the emotions or figure anything out. I've learned that my process is, just like that person who gets busy, I instinctively go into fight, well, mostly flight and freeze and fawn. And I won't notice it, like that person has to stay busy. I get blank and numb. And then when I calm down enough, I just snap, and all of a sudden, all of those realizations come to me that some people would go to a mirror, have a conversation with somebody else. They arrive, for me, it by getting quiet and going away and doing nothing and basically allowing myself to kind of experience the fawn frozen process, it unthaws me for me to just snap back into my body and awareness, go, oh my God, wow, ding, 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 ding. And so all the awareness happens. And that's how I have to do it, is basically do nothing in recovery, which is my recovery. Like, I had to learn to stop doing the act of recovery, which is still an act of recovery. It's just, most people think it's, and I have these whole lists of all these things you should do. which for many people is very effective, but for there are people who are more like me, where they do all that, but at some point they need to learn to do none of that and let it arise on its own. And so what I've had to learn is if I want to if I'm not finding an answer, my old way was to double down, be a grinder, and dig for it and do more work. My new way is, oh, it's time to shut off. I must be in, flight, freeze, or fawn. So I just need to do nothing and let my, internal regulation drop down low enough that I reattach to myself and see everything. That's my active recovery, is to stop the typical process of recovery. And then I snap back into my body and go, oh yeah, it all started there. Okay. And then I'm back off to the races where I can stay more contained and present until I'm human. Look, we all want to get to this place of perfection where we're never triggered, never have an event. That's you're not human. That will never happen. It's about learning your internal process to a deeply intimate level, so that when things are going on, you know where you are in that process, and you know what to do or not to do in that process. And that takes a long time to learn. I mean, It's a deep relationship to understand yourself, and you have to go way beyond the typical information that's out there on how to get it. And that just takes time and a commitment to want to pursue it. But that's where our processes are a little bit different. I'm not saying mine's right. I'm just saying it's right for me. But that's what we have to figure out, is what is our right process.
Yeah, I think the processes can be dynamic depending on the seasons that we're in. What's going on, what's the challenge at hand.
Yeah.
And for example, for me, I've actually become pretty good and generally I've always been pretty good with silence. I've kind of been in the past one of those guys who's like, oh man, to be in a forest with pure silence for days and weeks, pure bliss. I can listen to myself. One of my biggest challenges was actually connecting with others and asking for help, for example, asking for my wants and needs. So once I heard myself, knowing what to do, and then actually following through with that. So when I say, for example, reaching out to someone, that's been one of the things that's been new to me, like reaching out to someone and asking for help with something that I really need help with, like admitting that and then doing it and really taking care of my wants and needs that way, not just by myself with someone else. And that's where I've had a lot of joy these days, because I'm finally doing it consistently. I no longer have any shame around asking for help, which was something I was working through for so long. And I think that's where, the season that I've been in, the whole speaking up in the moment also. Yeah. And it's interesting because what I've noticed is sometimes when these things, when I've worked them through, I notice how other people that haven't gravitate to me. It's so interesting. And I'm like, because then we have friction, I notice, and then they express their concern to me around something, and I realize, holy smokes, they have the same problem I had. And I just say, hey, would you be willing to just speak up in the moment next time rather than holding it in 2 weeks? And they're like, you know what, you're right. I will do that. So I guess you can also, as you can see, produce these wonderful things around you for others when you do this work, kind of connecting it to what we're talking about.
Yeah, I know it is, because it is seasons. I know the first 10 years I was in a season of a massive learning curve. I had to do a lot. The first seasons are all about doing. You need to read, you need to study, you need to take classes, you need to learn a whole new way of living, a whole new nomenclature, a whole new language. There is so much about how emotions work: trauma, fear, shame, denial, rejection, inadequate, abandonment, childhood, codependency, like love addiction, like every time I want to stop, I'm like, wait a minute, you got to mention these things, because these are all things, you got to learn. That's what I realized with emotional intelligence. Well, it's like we talked about last time, wonderful process. It's like, think of a tree, and there's a leaf on a tree. And someone goes, how did that leaf get there? And all you do is talk about the leaf. Well, the leaf came from a branch that was connected to a trunk that went down, that goes down to the ground and is connected to roots that all started from a seed. Well, emotional intelligence just tells you about the leaf. That's not enough. I mean, their process, it's great to be able to see a leaf and be aware of it and its colors and have a general understanding of it. But if you want, the 4 things that they try and teach of, self-awareness, self-management, then social awareness and social management, which is basically relationships, you need to find the seed.
Mm-hmm.
You can't solve those issues by just dealing with the leaf. Well, that's what I developed, is all of that. It's taken me decades to figure out what the seed is. And then how do you grow roots from that seed and then build, everything else? Well, that's what we have to do. And that takes time. And you have seasons where, like I had seasons where I made an active choice to say, screw the seed, screw the roots, screw the trunk, screw the branch. I'm going to go right back to the leaf. That's all. I don't want any of this. And I knew I was destroying myself. But that is part of the season 2, is a revolt against discovering and living in the seed.
It's so interesting because I have someone in my life that just went there, and that's the experience that brought me to disappointment. And there's ambivalence around the experience emotionally, because I've been there too. I rebelled as well against the world.
Yeah, we all do.
Right? So there's an understanding, but there's also this, like, man, of all people, I did not expect this person. How could they? After all we've been through, after all we said we wanted to accomplish, all these things, I'm like, but wait a second, like, they're human just like me. They're doing the same thing I did. And how can I point the finger if I did the same thing?
Love that. I had to write, I was hoping you'd get there. That's the thing we forget in relationships. We're all human and limited. And as much as we want to show up as this person we say we are and we're going to be, we are always going to be hurtful, and we're always going to let somebody down. That is the essence of being human. We cannot live up to all of our own expectations, and only the child in us demands that of somebody else and demands it of ourselves. That's a very immature process. The mature and moderate recognizes, my partner will do things to not show up and will run. Now, again, we get to decide our morals and values, needs and wants, negotiables and non-negotiables as to, okay, when they decide not to, does that cross a line for us? And only each individual gets to set that. I'm not the moral police on what that is, but it may be like, that's just too far off the reservation for me. Okay. But that's the biggest mistake in relationships, is once I've said I love you and I've committed to this, we expect perfection.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It extends to beyond romantic relationships, because I've experienced this in work relationships.
Yeah, any relationship. Yeah, good point.
Any friendship. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, any relationship. That's a sure sign that we're not in our authentic self and we're not mature and moderate is when the other person in the relationship exercises their humanity and their limitations, and we have a reaction where we go, I can't believe they did that.
Mm-hmm.
That lets us know that we kind of got into the fantasy of oh, I forgot this person is human. And I think we have a very gross over valuation of how perfect we all are as humans, and are not in reality of how immensely fallible we are consistently and constantly. And we are very disappointing, not only to others, but most of all to ourselves. I don't think we're in reality of how often that happens, how consistently it happens. And that disconnection from truth is a major source of our relationship issues. I'm not condoning poor behavior or anything like that, but if you don't expect poor behavior from any type of relationship, you're just not in reality. You're not even close, and therefore you're probably not really. Relationships of any kind are going to be very volatile for you.
Yeah, I have noticed that. Even if there's that illusion and disillusionment, one thing has been consistent as a noticeable pattern when it shows up, like when the imperfections come out, and it's whenever there is an overwhelming amount of emotional distress, the rug being pulled under the feet. I've noticed it, like, because people can be in their best behavior. All of us can be in our best behavior when everything's fine and dandy. But what happens when a relationship with a family member breaks down, and the person gets like 3 months behind on rent? The person at the same time, their girlfriend leaves them, and like, how like their life falls apart, so to say, right?
Yeah.
Can that person be perfect at that point? It's next to impossible. Like, why would they?
And that's the separator. I love that you brought that up. Most people, when their life starts to fall apart, that's when they really fall back into childhood and the victim position and blame and collapse, and depression and anxiety. They just shut down. And that's what I learned. The answer is in the opposite. Is what this process, emotional mastery, has given me, is when my life goes to hell, I get excited. I know this is the greatest opportunity in front of me. I'm like, it's everywhere. And that takes a level of decades of work doing the do, and learning about all these different skills and everything, so that becomes the new neural pattern response, versus replaying, the program victim response of collapse as a child, where we couldn't do anything about it. We had to succumb to it. Well, we don't have to, but if you develop the skills and tools, then you recognize, wait a minute, I'm now an adult, and misfortune is my fortune. It's the doorway to my fortune. But you don't see that or know that unless you develop out of the worst day cycle and all the different things that I teach. Then you see, like you said, most relationships fall apart there and get really sketchy. They're the trigger that creates the problem in the relationship.
Where the challenge there is, you have this crossroads in that moment you just mentioned, which is, do I go deeper into the crucible, or do I completely avoid and go into my past and relive it, basically? And I guess, think about it from our perspective, like witnessing somebody getting to that crossroads and then choose, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and relive my past, because it's going to, let's say, conveniently reliving the past involves, instead of being 3 months on rent, immediately all income's taken care of, meaning financially they'll be all right. Or it also means that, yes, I may fake myself that everything's all right into these relationships that are superficial, and these people don't really give a crap about me, but they're high level connections, with really, high level people, right? Like the presidents of companies, the leaders of industries, And even though they don't know you personally and appreciate the authentic you, well, at least you're making big moves with big people. And that path is a lot easier in the moment because there's no time, what are your thoughts around that? Because technically we live in a world, where capitalism is the way. In the United States, for example, your bills keep coming in. So a person like that in that moment of overwhelm could think, well, like there's no time and there's no place to do the deep inner work. Like I gotta just focus on these things and screw it. Like I'm gonna just have to live that way, except that life is fucked that way. So to say, you know what I mean? Like, excuse my French, but
No, that it reminds me. It's funny you're bringing this up. I kind of had a quote pop into my head today. And this is how it happens for me. Like, this is what I mean. The arising happens. I don't have to do the work. After years of work, the work now does itself for me. It happens. And I just pulled it up because I always keep my phone with me, because when they happen, I have to puke them in my phone because I forget them. And the quote was, "A child makes excuses for their mistakes while an adult takes responsibility for them and puts a plan in place so they no longer have to suffer the consequences that naturally come from those mistakes." And so that's what you're describing is F it. That's a child response. And, so that's the fork in the road. Do I go back to being a child and make excuses? Well, capitalism sucks. It's the world. I've got to blame somebody. A child looks to blame somebody. An adult takes responsibility and goes, okay, so this is the system of the world in this current situation I'm in. What can I control? What am I responsible for? What plan can I put in place to navigate this? I may want it different. Okay, well, what am I going to do about making it different? If I don't like the capitalist system, I could go be a survivalist and just pick a mountain and I'll start shooting and killing my own food, build a ton of, like, I'll just check out. Many people, not many, I don't know, some people have just checked out from society and gone, I'm going to live off the land. Well, there's an option. You're not part of it now. Right. It's all up to you. I mean, I don't know, but that's the thing is when life gets tough, you'll know if you're in the child state or the mature and moderate. If you're in the child state, you make excuses and you go to blame. If you're in the adult state, you focus on what you can control and you take responsibility and put a plan in place. That's the dividing line. And so that's also a representation of your attachment to your authentic self, where you are in your recovery journey, how often you take the adult fork in the road versus the child fork. And that's contingent upon how much work and effort you put into learning to make the adult fork your natural, pattern response and neural pathway. So, there are many layers to that, but that's basically the dividing line is if you're excusing your mistakes and blaming others, you're in the child state. If you're taking responsibility, focusing on what you can control and taking action on that responsibility plan, you're in the mature and moderate state. And also letting go of the outcome and just going, oh, well, this is what I'm going to try. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You can absorb the imperfection of yourself and the world. The child.
When you have clarity around what taking responsibility, like you're saying, is, you also understand the nuances and the steps, the process of that in a way where, for example, I heard a notable figure say recently, exchange your expectations for appreciation and you'll see your life get better. I could understand how a quote like that makes sense. But that to me is like what you've been talking about, the leaf, the surface level.
Yeah.
Exactly. The bubblegum personal development. Why? Because, well, yes, you can exchange perspectives to see the bright side, right? So to say, that's close enough to that kind of quote. But that thinking does not address the root of what's creating that perspective, that seeing the world through that lens, right? And so that technically, what a lot of people don't see, especially in the world of general population personal development, right? The superficial emotional intelligence personal development level, is that statement can lead you into further avoidance and rationalization and spiritual bypassing, like, oh, I'm just exchanging expectations for appreciation, da-di-da-di-da. Everything's fine, even though there's a fire around me and I should be running from, the house burning down. I'm in the fire, the roof's about to collapse on me, and it's all fine and dandy. That's really what it's promoting, right?
Beautifully said. The false positivity, it's, what most people could, we talked about this earlier, what most people consider deep personal work. This sounds so disparaging. And this is where I wish I was more like Gabor Mate or Jordan Peterson, where they can elegantly bring up a point that doesn't demean others. And I'm still in my recovery journey of being able, what's in my heart and my execution of it, there's a mismatch. But those types of comments, most people would consider, being in the work and being in the process. And you're still in your diapers. Like literally, you're still in your diapers. There is so much beyond that. Like you said, where did that thought even come from? Do you know that it started with a feeling? The mantra that you said, change your expectations. Do you understand how there's bypassing in that and all of these different things going on way down here that create that? Well, no, you're just gonna, oh, that feels good. Yeah, I'll just change. Okay, well, my expectations were too high today. I don't know if that's true. Maybe they weren't high enough, but you don't know the root. And so you throw a comment like that out there, and you see how that can, for people who haven't investigated the branch, the tree, and the root and the seed, how that could lead them to horrific consequences because they're just not going to have expectations. Well, you need to know what to have expectations on based on your authenticity and, your morals and values, needs, and all of these different things. So yeah, that's
maybe you should be standing up for what you want and need. Maybe
Yeah.
you should be speaking up for an agreement that you both said was going to go this way and somebody didn't follow through. Maybe it's not about exchanging the expectation for appreciation. Maybe it's about saying the truth and asking, hey, how are we going to deal with this? Because exchanging for appreciation in this case, for example, and I see this as mainly an issue and a problem, a challenge for people that struggle with asserting themselves, like saying, no, that doesn't work for me, like this, right? Like some people do not want to communicate this way. They just always want to be like, let me take a look at the bright side. Let me see what's positive about this and just express my gratitude. And maybe everything will just fix itself and it'll all be fine. Like, no, sometimes you have to hit the thing head on. You can have grace. You can have patience. You can still be assertive without being aggressive, like trying to tear somebody apart, but assertive in the way of like, hey, this doesn't work for me. We said this was going to be that way. It's this way now. How can we address it? And have this mindset of, let's get to a better solution rather than ignoring wants and needs and just pleasing whatever works for the other person. Usually what I've seen is these kind of people say the words, going with the flow, just going with the flow, going with the flow. You know what I mean? And it's like,
yeah, that whole term, the flow, like
yes, there's a time and place for things like that. But in certain situations like this, you and I know what that means.
Avoidance. Yeah, detachment. I'm not going to be present. I'm not going to deal with it. And at least in my life experience, I've just never seen it work. I mean, long term, it's a short term strategy that never pans out in the long run. Yeah, and what you're describing is, yes, you're right. You can have a boundaried response. You can use what Pia Melody calls a wall of pleasantness to have those difficult conversations. Well, how do you develop that skill? You need a lot of codependence recovery.
Mhm.
You need to develop a lot of skills in a confrontation model. You need to know how to confront somebody without taking their inventory, without people don't realize whenever you tell somebody what they should, or what they did think, feel, believe, or do, you're being verbally abusive. That's abuse. You shouldn't do that. I don't know that that's true. Like that, people don't realize that's verbal abuse. That's the definition of verbal abuse. And that's how everyone talks to each other. Everyone takes the other person's inventory and tells them who they are and what they think they are. That is so severely codependent. Yet just turn on any social media, whatever. Everyone's, in almost every discussion, people are yelling and screaming, telling them what they should think, feel, believe, or do. There's no boundaries in that. There's no confrontation model. There's no maturity and moderation. It's a childhood adaptation strategy that never produces relationship. And so learning even knowing that that's abuse. Like most people go, oh, that I can hear thousands of people going, oh, that's not abuse. Come on, you're just being too nitpicky. Boom, right there. That response right there tells me how young you are in your recovery journey. Remember the quote earlier? A child makes excuses. They minimize, surprise. No, because they don't want to take responsibility. They don't want to grow up, and they shouldn't grow up. They're a child, but that's a learned behavior that we need to, we don't need to, we get to decide. See, there was me catching myself. I was about to take the world's inventory and say, we need. And so there was my child popping up. Like that's a perfect example of how my child just popped its head out and went, you all need to be different. And then adult maturity came over time and went, no. I love you, little guy. And I know you get all excited about this because you were hurt, but this isn't about you. You popped up because I wasn't doing my job as your mature and moderate parent. Let me take care of this for you. You don't have to be here today. I'll speak. You go play. I'll protect us. And the way I protect us is by changing those words from we get to decide. That's an invitation to relationship. That's also me taking responsibility for myself, but perfectly fine if anyone else chooses not to. And so that it's just funny how life creates a situation to, kind of show what we're talking about. But that's exactly it. Well, most people in that moment, that there was as you mentioned earlier, the fork in the road. I had an opportunity to go right back down the old childhood fork. But because of the years of practice, I've created the self-awareness to go, oh, there it is. No, that goes against my morals and values, needs and wants, negotiables and non-negotiables. I want to get out of my childhood adaptations. I want to do my best to live in maturity and moderation. I can forgive and excuse myself that it happens because I'm human and limited. I can forgive myself, but I choose truth, responsibility, healing, and forgiveness. And that whole moment encapsulates everything you brought up of there it is in action. That's the difference. And that's how it happens. Now, how did I get that? Well, it's taken a very long time. Certain aspects happen like that. Other aspects I'm still not very good at, and that's okay. It's okay.
I share with a lot of my students that I do teach music aspects as well. I say the grandmaster is the eternal student.
Yeah.
you know? And that's really the one that becomes incredible at what they want to do, right?
I love that. I'm going to steal that. Why didn't I think of that? I need your authentic self inside me. That was beautiful. I love that.
Well,
There's so much.
Yoda from Star Wars inspired me there.
Yeah, I don't watch Star Wars or was that Star Wars or Star Trek? Yeah, it's Star Wars, I think. Yeah, I didn't watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Star Wars, man. I'm a big fan of the whole thing. But so Yoda's like this. He's underestimated. He's like this very old, like 600 years
Yeah,
old
I know who he
grandmaster.
is. Yeah.
Do you know the character? Gotcha. Yeah. And he's always saying like these wisdom quotes. So the reason why I bring it up is because I get so many analogies of this kind of work from that series. Like I've even said to some of my friends jokingly, I don't want to pull off a Darth Vader on you, which means a narcissistic pull in which I'm going to manipulate you or belittle you into something. So it's kind of a fun way to make associations to the stuff that we talk about.
See, I probably could have been a hell of a lot smarter if I'd have watched Star Wars. The gap in my process. I missed out on
I think you still have fun with it. It's
yeah.
At any age, man, it's still a good show. Anyway, yeah, the Grandmaster is the eternal student. And I say that because a lot of students, I see some that are patient, but a lot of them are impatient. They want to see something right now.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the work, you just said it. Some things will come easier, sometimes some things will come in due time. Some things, it'll just be as it is for a very long time.
Yeah.
And that's the journey of several things that I've been working on recently, especially. One, acceptance. Two, building a healthy relationship with my anger and showing it in a way that's graceful. What does that mean? Well, for a lot of men, especially, I'm going to focus on men because that's my specialization. Well, and I say men because I've been that guy raised in an all-women family, no masculine figure of influence, and completely lost where I became the nice guy. And we all know what the nice guy means. A guy that does not demonstrate.
Who's really angry. It's just suppressed.
Well, in depth, you know what it means. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I found
or
out.
Woman, either. It's not just a male trait. The nice person is so angry.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and it's camouflaged through that extreme niceness, right? Well, having been the nice guy, having been that guy that had a lot of women friends, but next to no girlfriends, and then no male friends for a long time. On and on, like no male friends to confide on, barely any people to really share the true authentic me, my hopes, my dreams, my wants, my fears, what bothered me, what made me sad. I didn't share these things before with anyone. Well, what came of that was isolation. What came from that was life. You shared this analogy with me one day where it was the video of this guy who kept falling down and bouncing back up.
Oh yeah, isn't that a great video? I love
video. It was like that. It was like, oh, that's the journey. You said life, bouncing back up and falling back down and bouncing back up. And you were saying how the child, there was a child there like clapping and laughing as they were witnessing it. So that was interesting. Well, the reason why I bring this up is because acceptance, assertiveness, and a healthy relationship with anger, that's what had me realize I could actually stop falling at least as many times, reduce the number of falls and go up a couple steps. Even if I fall again, but I don't fall as deeply, I get back up quicker and I go further.
Yeah, I love that. The day I remember I spent years wanting to be mature, thinking I was mature, and thinking I knew a lot. The day I figured out I was actually getting mature was when I had the realization of, I don't know enough. Even though I've developed all this stuff, like I am acutely aware of how little I know. And it's okay. That life is just too big.
Yeah.
You can take any specialty you want and you'll never learn every aspect of it. It's too much. And so, like you said earlier, and it made me kind of realize that child-adult dynamic and the difference between, yes, early in the process, you just want it done, you want to figure it out. You do think you know it all, you think you're done. You know you're maturing when you wake up to almost a visceral, well, it's not almost, it is a visceral experience of overwhelm of, oh, I'm so underqualified. And I mean, even a Tom Brady or, take Elon Musk. Oh my God, I'm so underqualified. Gifted people way beyond anything I'll ever do or achieve. But that's true for all of us, even them. I don't know them personally. I don't know where, what they're like as people, but I know this, if they're in a mature and moderate state, as gifted as they are, that's the reaction that would confirm that they're in a mature and moderate state. If they think they have it figured out, that means there's more work there. Because you're right, we never stop the student process. And with maturity and moderation, you can accept that. You don't need it to be over. Like that was the other thing is, so many clients I work with, they're like, how long will this take? Well, if they choose to go on the journey, as they get further along, they realize, I don't want it to be over. I love being the student. The student is where all the action is. Like this is where peace is. It's not in being the person with all the wisdom and it's over. There's no joy in that. And there's no peace in that. Because that's where they are now. They're the seeker of the wisdom, and they think that's what will bring them peace. But it never does, because you can't attain it all. It's too big.
Peace is in enjoying the journey.
Yeah, but you can't. That's a lived experience that you can try and explain to somebody until they get there, they can't truly have acceptance. Like, there's another buzzword. Oh, just acceptance. Well, I guess to me, acceptance is the ability to be okay with not everything being okay. I don't need to know it all. I don't need to fix it all. I don't need to have an answer. I don't need, that need for a need is gone. And so when the need shows up, you can catch yourself and go, I don't know if I need that. Maybe I do. And it could be a genuine need, but you're accepting that, well, it's not happening. So maybe it's not a need. Like it's really, I don't know that I have the words to really explain it, but I'm trying. At any rate, that to me was, that's been a groundbreaker for me.
It's letting go of the need of excessive control, compulsive control.
Sure.
Controlling what we don't have really control over. That's part of that aspect that you're talking about, the acceptance.
Beautifully said. It is recognizing that as much as we want control, we have virtually none. Virtually none.
But that's the thing, that the things what I've noticed is the most challenging part of acceptance is that the ones to control that are most excessive are the ones that come from wanting to control what is not under our control. And that's why I want to control it.
Yeah.
And that's what I call in a way, I call it the Darth Vader, the choking, because it's literally, I'm going to choke you so you do what I want you to do. No, I'm protecting you, but I'm going to choke you. This is for your good, you know? And if I was sharing with a friend, I was like, pay attention to all the villains, not just Star Wars, but any of the movies, all the villains that you don't like. Any movie in the last 10 years or whatever, any decade. Listen to what they say, and then look up, for example, one of the books that you recommended, which is Beverly Engel's Verbally Abusive
Really
Relationship.
abusive relationship. Yeah.
Fantastic book. Look up that book and then listen to the villains and look at what the book says about what is verbal abuse, emotional, psychological abuse. And you'll literally see that the reason why you don't like the villains is because they do everything that this book says. Now, the interesting thing is many of us have gotten used to growing up in family environments where those things that are said by villains are said by our parents, are said by many people in our lives, and we accept them as normal. And there's a disconnect, right? And that's the reason why we've gone into this state of then wanting to, and then thinking that that's okay, first of all, but also wanting to exercise, because these are controlling mechanisms, right? Controlling mechanisms of that nature on others when sometimes when we don't even realize it. And so letting go involves letting go of all those strategies that maybe even work, because that's the thing. They can be effective. They can be like the dark arts, you know what I mean? Like the dark arts of life where there's dark arts everywhere. It's not just like dark arts of Harry Potter magic. I'm talking about dark arts of sales, you know, dark arts of marketing. You can manipulate someone into a sale, or you could lead someone in a healthy way to a proper solution to their problem, right? You can do marketing the healthy way. You can do marketing the manipulative way. Sales, communication, relationships. As you can see, they all relate. So the reason why I point this out is because, you know, Hollywood movies, pop culture, all these things influence a lot of our childhood.
Yeah.
Right? Along with our family experiences.
Yeah,
So
the Tinder swindler video that I did, the whole documentary starts with her talking about how she grew up watching The Beauty and the Beast. Think of that, The Beast. And she picks a narcissist. Like, she had a fantasy of being rescued and rescuing the beast. And so that's who she picked. Within 45 minutes, she hops on a private plane with this guy. She was conditioned to look for the beast, yet the whole documentary is, oh my God, she was taken advantage of. What a victim. I'm going, no, they victimized each other. They were each other's beast. You know, at least he, you know, well, they were both cloaked as the beauty, but each was the beast. And they just exercised it from polar opposite positions. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yep. And that's the astounding thing, that it's not until you dive deep into this work, reading the books, whatever it is, getting the coaching, going to the group meetings or online or physical, doesn't matter, doing all these things, that you start seeing these things for what they were and realize, oh my, like, you know, that's why the question comes as, who are you really? Who are you really? As in, like, do you realize that you may be acting today as all the things that you were told to be in the past, in your childhood or in a previous relationship, right? Like, who are you? Who are you deciding to be today from a conscious place where you're completely in the present, making a choice as to, you know what, this decision, this choice, this specific communication towards someone is leading my life exactly where I wanted to go.
And I love that, because one thing I've recognized is I think I'm in my authenticity, that this was my calling and this is what I'm supposed to do. But I also know that I am so full of, you know what, that it is incredibly possible I will wake up tomorrow, a week from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, and go, man, was I messed up. I was so far away from who I am. you know, because I thought I was a golfer. I thought I was all these things
Yep.
and thought they were authentic to me, only to realize, oh, that was just an adaptation. Well, this could be one too. I don't
Mhm.
see it yet. Based on my level of recovery and understanding of myself and the people around me, this is my best guess. But I am open to the fact that I'm full of it. And I am totally okay with the idea of waking up one day and going, oh my God, actually, that was just another fraudulent part of me. Thank God I see it now. Like I think that goes back to your Yoda quote. I wanted the student, what is it? The student is the wisdom. How does it say it?
Well, the quote is mine, but it's inspired by Yoda.
Okay.
The grandmaster is the eternal student.
Student. Okay. Yeah. I'm fine with being the eternal student and having moments where I think I'm the grandmaster only to find out, oh, I'm still the student. And so it could be that right now I think I'm the grandmaster, and I may wake up to find out, no, I'm still the student. I mean, I do know that there's too much. As much as I think I know about everything I talk about, I know very little. There's too much to know. Now, because so few people research these things and know, it may appear as though, I have a lot, but that's really a reflection on society and our lack of knowledge around these concepts. And I chose to pigeonhole myself over here. But to truly know all this stuff, there's just too much to know. Now, I don't think that belittles my abilities or anything. I just think that's truth. I know some stuff, but
Yeah.
but there's more that I don't know than I do know. And I think that's okay. I think that's a good place to be.
Think of how wonderful that is, the blank canvas of every day to
Yeah.
approach learning with joy and excitement. Because when we're children and especially those first few days when we begin to see the world, like, I don't know if you've like witnessed babies, how they're so in awe in the first few days with some things like colors and interacting and touching everything around them with wonder and curiosity. That's what I'm talking about.
That's a great visual. That's complete acceptance of their inadequacy. That's really what acceptance is to me, is I am so massively inadequate. Isn't it wonderful? Like acceptance isn't tolerating poor behavior or poor things. It's that, yeah, even as much as I mature and grow, I'm inadequate. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what a child, the study showed a child as small as 400 times a day, an adult less than 20. What is that? A detachment from self-acceptance, that it's okay to be inadequate and be in this brave new world where, like you said, colors, there's just so much to consume and understand. It's too big, but there's absolutely no fear. There's pure acceptance of I'm just this little speck and I don't need to be any more. It's good enough. And all of that gets taken away. And so the journey to me is returning back to that.
There's also a joy and the experience of full joy living within your senses. Like, think about it. We are our experience of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and even energetic feeling. Like, right, you could sense somebody walking into a room when they're pissed and when they're happy, and you're like, oh, I want some of that. Or when they're pissed and you're like, oh, I want to be around this person, right? So there's beyond the physical touch, right? But that's what I see here. It's that joy, that fully living and allowing and embracing of the joy and the experience of the senses. Because when I think about it this way, when we live in the past, we get out of our senses. Many times we go in here. We just completely sever the body and just go here.
Yeah,
start circulating in this area.
Yeah, that's a great point.
right?
Yeah, life becomes solely contained here. It's so funny you mentioned that because, you know, when I catch myself doing that, what I always do is just pause and go, okay, what do I hear? That's how I reconnect to everything is I just start listening,
Yeah.
you know, and try and see how many different sounds I can pick up. And the next thing you know, that whatever that life I was living inside of here goes away. I feel I feel all my five senses, but then my presence comes back to the bigger world outside of this world, you know, and yeah, I've never thought of it the way you just said it, but you know, that's a good way of describing it.